just enjoying watching what Matt's eye takes to here. It's pretty cool.
On this episode, I'm joined by Clinton Charlton. We talk about his start into the world of music, a few of his projects, and what drives him to keep creating. Of course, he played us a few tunes too. So sit back, sip your poison, and enjoy the ride. I'm Kalen Capson, and this is the Pagan Place Podcast.
That's a powerful one, and you'd think I would have been prepared for that. But different things, I suppose. It changes as I do, you know. I mean, when I was a kid, I lived in Grand Bay, just outside the city, but I grew up in the mid 70s, and it was a very different place then. It was much more isolated, and there were no kids in my neighborhood, so music was like a companion for me and a mystery. And I used to it's embarrassing, I suppose, but I used to keep track of the American Top 40 every Sunday, and I would try to be able to like predict what the chart moves would be week to week, so like music was always just kind of my hobby or like a mystery, I think is probably the good word. And then as I got older and I started participating in it, it became a comfort. All those awkward social situations, parties and different things that you go through growing up, I would always go to the musicians, and if I could jam or even just be chatting music, that was my comfort zone, And then that translated to the stages. I'm grateful to music. It's been a constant companion in my life. It's been something that has seen me through things. It's been something that's, just part of who I am. So it's one of those impossible questions to answer, but a lot is, I suppose, my answer to that. It's great. It's like, it's just part of my life. Like, I'll always make music, always.
Yeah. When did you decide that making music was something for you?
Well, I always had the desire, At 14, I bought it was called an Anjo, a 6-string acoustic from Steve English in Grand Bay. My friend Chris Curry and I, we went to this girl, Kelly Ferris. She knew how to play guitar. And she showed us chords. And she had shown me a G and a D, and I thanked her and immediately went home. I didn't even stay for the third chord, and I started writing songs, I guess then. And I don't even know why. Maybe because it was easier than figuring songs out, but I just felt like I loved Paul Simon. When like Graceland came out, that was a big thing for me. And I thought, well, cool, if I write songs, I'm like that guy, And I think maybe that's might have been where it started, but I don't know. I always wanted to write songs, like always. I used to write poems when I was a kid, and I thought, well, one day I'll learn how to play piano. Piano was what I thought I would learn. And I was like, I'll put all these poems to music. And I don't know why. I've just always thought songwriters were, I don't know, above, like that's just always what I wanted to be, always. I don't know why. Do you remember video hits?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like, we had 3 channels, right? There were 2 English channels and then a French channel. And so the only exposure we got to videos was this show called Video Hits that came on at 4:30. Yeah. So like I'd run home and get my homework done and watch Video Hits. And there was like so much Canadian content that places like Toronto, you'd see the advertisements for the Horseshoe Tavern, and, we're just like this mecca of, oh my God, the mystery of that. But it also at the same time felt really attainable because it was Canadian, like the Northern Pikes or 5440, like the kind of stuff that they would play. So, it seemed like you say, like idolization, but not so out of reach as a Michael Jackson or a Madonna. It seemed more like, oh, I could be part of this, and that show was huge for me, actually.
Going from 2 chords.
Yeah, for a long time.
When were you comfortable in front of people playing?
Maybe not yet. I don't, I don't know. It's
a common answer, actually.
Like what happened was, so I started playing guitar, but when I was 18, I bought a drum set. All of my friends that played, everybody needed a drummer, so I bought a drum set. And then for the longest time, while I was at home writing my songs, I wasn't playing them for anybody. For the longest time, I was a drummer in cover bands or original bands. But and it wasn't until 2003, 2004 when I started to play my own songs out. And that became like just this, once I got a taste for that, I wasn't letting that go, And then I suppose, that might be when I got comfortable with it. Even in my 30s, like it took a long time to be able to get to the point where I felt like if I was playing a show or sharing my music with somebody, that I could do it in a way that felt like I was sharing, because I think there's a difference between performing and sharing your music, Yeah. I think you can go through the motions and sing the words and play the chords, but I also think you can share the feeling and the stories and try to be, quote unquote naked. That's where I want to get to. And sometimes I think I do. But, that's, maybe only in the past 10 years that I've kind of been able to tap into that a bit.
Do you remember the first time you played in front of people?
Like my own songs?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I do. I know I was in this band called Second Chance. And this would have been like high school. And we did one of my songs, and we played it at Gene's Country Palace on Union Street, if you remember that place. That was probably the first time, but I didn't sing it though. I wasn't the singer in that band, but that might have been like the first time. But no, I don't actually remember the first time I would have sang my own stuff in front of people. I know when I first started singing in front of people, it was karaoke. I loved that.
Do you still karaoke?
I love karaoke, yes. Any chance, I think my friends think I'm obsessed. Anytime we're looking for something to do, I'll suggest that. They never go for it, but I'll always suggest it.
Requires a certain level of...
I love karaoke.
Liquid courage for me to...
Same. Yeah. Same.
What's the first time that you do remember playing in front of people?
At all? My original material? Well, I think it would have been... There was a club called Studio 112.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that place? That was kind of like the clubhouse for local bands. And I was in this band called the Butterfly Effect where I played drums. And after that band broke up was when I really decided like, okay, I want to front a band. I want to be a singer-songwriter. So I started a band called the Carousels. And I think that's probably where my original music, when I would have started performing that. And we would have played at like Studio 112 a bunch.
I do remember the Carousels. I
also do?
Remember Butterfly Effect.
Oh, wow.
That was with Chris Fudge?
That was with Chris Fudge. Yeah. Amazing. Wow. He was just texting me, actually. That's amazing.
Really?
Right on.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I remember him from... Well, he used to hang out with Alex Thorne.
You know Al Thorne?
I do know
Al Thorne just had twins.
Really? Oh, man. I did not know that.
I love that guy. Yeah, well, so Happy Medium. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So his little brother, Scott,
is
who I grew up with.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a small world.
Yeah, it is small world.
Yeah, they're great guys.
Oh, yeah, they're great.
The Butterfly Effect was like kind of my, my first introduction to the local music scene. I had been in this band called Mohair Sam, and we had written a bunch of songs, but, we would have been more of a bar band. That was the scene that we were in, and we did a lot of covers and stuff. And then after I got out of that band, my friend Chuck Teed introduced me to Chris Fudge to join that band, the Butterfly Effect, and like that was a whole world I didn't even know what was going on in St. John.
Yeah,
and that felt really like like home. Like I desperately want to be part of this.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
crazy.
Small world.
It is a small world. Funny how much that happens.
Yep.
And Jason and I yesterday, Jason Ogden,
yep.
we were talking about the sense of community. How he said he had moved away and he didn't realize that there was this sense of community, but when he came back, it was...
When he went to Toronto?
Yeah. But when he came back, it was more encompassing. Because I think back then, even back when Butterfly Effect was fun, I think it was a little more segregated.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, I agree. It's funny, like, the quote-unquote kids of the scene, like, they're doing it right. They're all supporting each other. And there's when we were their age, or at least when I was their age, things felt more competitive. And not in the, you guys suck kind of way. Just more like in the, you'd go, oh yeah, good set, bud. But then you go, they were all right. Like things felt, and I think a little bit of competition is healthy actually. But yeah, there's like way more of a sense of community now than there was. And there was too, there was a sense of community, but you're right. Things were more like there was this crew of people that went to this club. There was this crew of people that did this. And,
right. Yeah.
And there wasn't as much crossover, and there's still to this day it's like that a bit. There's the cover band crew of people and there's the original people, and they don't dabble with each other, and I'm baffled by that.
Yeah, that's true. I never really thought about that.
That's weird.
Absolutely right.
I don't know why there's such a line in the sand about that stuff, but there seems to be.
I noticed it mostly with Quality Block Party.
Yeah,
right. You go see one band, and then the next night you go see a couple other bands, and there's a switching up of some of the members and stuff.
Yeah.
And you realize that there is this community of people that totally has each other's backs. And
absolutely, yeah.
playing. But back then I didn't see it. But I could have been ignorant too. Like I just might
No, I think you're probably right. But I absolutely know what Jason was talking about and what you're talking about too, yeah.
Remember the CD Chuck put out? Barbecue Records?
Yeah.
St. John's Finest?
Yep.
I still have that.
Right on. There was, what, three of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
CDs.
That was like a big thing, that we could have a CD and be part of it. It's funny, everybody has a CD now, but when that came out, that was like, oh my God, this is local and it's real.
Yeah.
That was a really neat thing.
Oh, that was a big deal to get your hands on that.
Absolutely.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Like Chuck really kickstarted something back then, which I don't think St. John really had before that.
No, he's great for the scene and always was.
A lot wouldn't even have developed, I don't think, if you didn't.
And it's all passion and, he loved it. That's why, he just loves it and still does.
Thinking back to everything that I can think of him doing.
Yeah.
And it comes up a lot, like in a lot of interviews.
I bet. Yeah.
Even from newer people that are just blossoming now, still Chuck has a hand in giving them advice that turned out to be the best thing for them, kind of a thing. It's really
and
impressive.
then, with interactions, he's like raising the next,
Yeah.
it's great.
It is great.
Maybe that's his plan the whole time. Maybe he just wants longevity.
Just pass his legacy on. So you're in multiple projects even still, and you've got your hands in a lot of cookie jars. What projects are you working on right now?
Well, I got a few things going on. We just made a record a few months back that'll come out in the new year with Jessica Ray. I just did some sessions for a songwriter from Saskatoon named Deanna Ouellette. I played some drums on her record. That'll be out in the new year. I did a Debbie Adshade record that I'm just over the moon about. I'm such a fan. I couldn't be in the same room with her. So I'm really excited about that coming out in the new year. Bonnet House will start a new record in January. And I've paid for some studio time at Bonnet House, which is also an actual place too, with Bill Preeper. So I hope to make my own record in the new year too. And Penny Blacks has got some new stuff too. So I'm hoping we'll make a new record in the new year. So lots of stuff, I guess.
How do you find the time?
It's, what's funny is I have 2 children and a wife, and I find that I I have so much time on my hands. Like, you'd think that it would sound like I'm busy all the time, but I'm not. It just works out. I don't like to sit in front of a TV at night or anything, despite my appearance. And so I'd rather be, working on something than sitting around and not building something, So I guess that's how it gets done. But yeah, it's not as crazy as it might sound. And also, like, in most of the projects I'm in, there's a lot of duplicate people. So, that makes it easy for if I'm working on some Jessica Ray stuff, for example. Well, Chris Braden's also in her band and he's in Penny Black. So that means, okay, well, we're working on this right now, or vice versa. If we're doing Penny Black's tour or something, well, then we're not available to do Jessica Ray stuff. So, it works out in that way. And same thing with Bonnet House. Sandy McKay is in Jessica's band as well. He plays bass. So if we're busy with Jess, then Bonnet House gets put on the back burner. So it kind of all works out. As long as we have a duplicate and it's not just me that's holding up the house of cards, we're okay.
How did you get tied up with all these projects?
Well, the Penny Blacks I've been in the longest, almost 10 years now, maybe even more. And that just came from, hanging around Elwood's and being a fan of Jason Ogden's and the music that he made. I remember I had invited him I used to live in Milford, and we had this apartment that had a warehouse attached to it, and that's where the Butterfly Effect would jam. And we were having a birthday party for the guy who owned the building and was also in the Butterfly Effect, Mark Goslin. And it was going to be in this warehouse, and we were all going to jam. And so I'd invited Jason Ogden to come to the party, and I was like really excited at the notion that he might. And he came. And I remember just being like so over the moon wanting to impress him that I gave him a guitar that night. Please be my friend. So, anyway, our friendship was pretty quick. And that's how I got in Penny Black. He wanted to do this other project that was less heavy than the projects he had going on with NFA and Hospital Grade. I wanted to be a part of anything he was doing. So by all means. So that's how Penny Blacks came to be. And with Jessica, I planted that seed a couple years back, and it was like, hey, if you ever need a drummer, So that one, I just kind of got lucky there. And Bonnet House was kind of unique, actually. I went through a period where, I didn't feel like playing. My father had passed away, is what had happened, and I kind of on the other end of it now. I think I was in a bit of a depression, and I didn't feel like making music. I couldn't make music. I wasn't writing. And I played this show where Bill and Sandy, the other two guys from Bonnet House, were playing. And there was a little after party. And so we went to that and we got talking and we just had so much in common. They're big Roots music fans. Fans, God, they're like encyclopedias of Roots music, really. So, just picking their brains and just kind of, being caught up in their enthusiasm for life and music was a big thing. So we decided to try our hand at just getting together, and so that happened really naturally. But the side benefit that I didn't foresee with them was that they really reignited a passion for music and songwriting. They built me up from that low place I was in, and I'm really like eternally grateful to those two dudes. And I think the record we made kind of reflects that spirit of friendship that was in the room when that was going on. But anyway, yeah, so that's how I got in some of those projects,
When you're setting goals, are you setting anything in a long-term sort of sense, or short-term where you want your music to end up, or do you just kind of step by step?
Yes and no. I mean, I know I always will. And sometimes I think, about things like, well, I should really work on learning more about music theory, or I should have been learning banjo, like work on those kind of things. But as far as like, where do I want to go with my music, those kind of aspirations, I don't have any long-term goals. And I used to, and I found it really discouraging and really depressing. And I find it way easier to just, not even easier, I find it way healthier to just keep making music. And because, my interests are going to change. What I want to do is going to change. What I can do is going to change. And so I don't want to have, such a trajectory set in my mind that it's not flexible, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. But, like short-term ones I love, especially with like this January through December project. That's great because I know that I have this deadline and I have to get something done, So I can't overthink things or, I find a lot of the time you think that you are something that, you're not once the tape starts rolling. You know what I mean? That's a good project for that. It's a humbling project in a lot of ways where, you know, I'll play a gig and be like, oh man, I killed that. And then I'll get in the studio and go to sing my song for the month and go, I'm a really bad singer. You know, it's a really humbling project, but the goals are great, you know, because it keeps me productive and I can't plan it out too much, you know. Good.
And it makes sense. Like you said, your interests are going to change. And
for sure, yeah.
You're obviously not setting out to sell out, so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, would it be cool to be, you know, like a career musician? I used to think so, but I don't know if it would actually. I mean, you know, I can make music my whole life and that's okay. But I don't have to worry about
pleasing people.
Right. You know, fitting in a certain thing or, you know, I don't even have to worry about it paying the bills each month, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So it always gets to stay pure. I would think that after a while as a career musician or, you know, the older I get and the more access I get to knowing people that are, I think that's a lot of work, you know, and hats off to the people that do it, but it's a lot of work. And how does it not interfere with the music? It must, you know, it must.
I agree. It would have to, if you're on tour, it would definitely have to interfere or change your songwriting process. Or
like, wouldn't you think like, oh, I better write a hit, you know, like, or at least try to, I don't know. Yeah.
I read Maynard from Tool, Maynard James Keenan, read his biography, and he talks a little bit about that. Whereas when they were putting out their third album, they're under an immense amount of pressure to keep up their momentum.
Yep.
Because it's the infamous trap of the third album.
Yep, for sure.
That's where most bands, that's where they flop out and
break up,
fall off the bandwagon.
Yep.
So to speak. So I think it would just totally affect your process and how you're thinking about music. And
I'm not trying to paint like a negative light or go, oh, these career musicians must be big old sellouts. But I'm just thinking like, you know, I'm realistic enough to know what my strengths are and that the probability of it is weak, but I'm also okay with it because I do think that I don't think it's as glossy as I might have thought it was when I was 25 years old.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say, you know?
I couldn't hack it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'll go out for a week with my pals in a van and I'm pretty tired by the end of that week. You know?
Can you imagine 300 days of the year doing that? I couldn't.
No, but God, I would like to try. You know, I say these things, but I wouldn't say no if it came. I think
it'd be an interesting experience. That's for sure. It'd be something for the books.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, you know. And as a I'm not much of a traveler, so not by choice, you know. But it just worked out that way. But you know, so if I can go to Barrie, Ontario, with my pals and play some music, that's amazing for me, you know. And I just saw Barrie, Ontario, you know.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And I think they get a kick out of it, you know, because all of my friends that I play with are more seasoned when it comes to touring, you know. So I think they get a kick out of me because I'm like going, look at this, you guys, you know. They're going, we know, we've been here, you know. It's kind of fun.
What about a gig? What's the worst gig you've ever played?
The worst gig I've ever played? Well, there's lots. Lots. And sometimes those end up being like the most fun. But I remember I did this thing called Floodstock, and it was the pay was great, the people were great, but the idea was they were going to have Joel Plaskett play. I think it was like maybe T4G. It's like maybe it's their company thing, or I might be getting it confused. But anyway, and then they wanted to keep the party going through the night, so they were going to put local performers on after that. So I was the first person to play after the Joel Plaskett band.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah, so he played to 400 screaming Joel Plaskett fans, and I played to 4 screaming Joel Plaskett fans. That was that was just in hindsight, really bad idea, you know. But, you know, he was super cool. He stood there and watched, which was really nice of him. I'm sure he wanted to go drink or do something, but he stood there and watched, which was nice. Him and 3 other people. So there was that one.
What about the best gig?
Oh, man, there's lots. You know, there's some that are like point to because you go, that experience was amazing. Like, I got commissioned by the city to write the 225th birthday song when St. John. Yeah, we got to debut that song at Harbor Station, you know, which was super cool, right? You know, Chuck Teed played with me, and so it was myself and a band called the Formers, my backing band, and we got to play that at Harbor Station, you know, and I got to wear like the the wireless mic set and walk around the stage like
Did you
Garth
feel a little
Brooks.
bit like, I was just
I
saying, did you
felt
feel like Garth
totally
Brooks?
foolish, but I also, it was like such a cool experience, you know. Or the Carousels got to play Soft Seat Theater tour with the Northern Pikes.
Oh,
that
wow.
was great, you know. I got to play at the Imperial Solo for the 100th anniversary concert. That was great. And things like that are the ones that on paper are the best gigs, you know, because they're like but they're not, you know. The best ones are the ones where it's like telling you about them would be dumb, you know, or like a Penny Black's gig where you go, hey, Jason, remember that time you said this? Haha, giggle, giggle. Like, that was such a fun night. And those are the ones that stick out for me, but to tell somebody about them, you know, you tell them about playing Harbor Station or playing the, you know, it doesn't excite anybody to say that
kind of
time
to be there, sort of.
Yeah, like, you know, I can remember this time when Penny Black's played a friend's wedding, and it was in a field somewhere up past Westfield, and the violin player and I just got like crazy drunk on wine afterwards, and it makes for such a bad story because that's it. But that was such a fun night, you know. And those gigs are like kind of the ones that stick out. You know, the friendship gigs, I guess.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that makes sense. Do you find it's easier to play in front of a giant crowd of people you don't know as opposed to a little tiny room where somebody just hands you a guitar and like, hey, play me a song? Yeah,
absolutely. Assuming that I've had both experiences. The anonymity of, you know, even to play to 5 people out of town is way easier than to play to, you know, 20 people in town, right? Yeah. To be in front of people that, you know, seen me in my shorts at the nature park trying to, you know, huff my way around the trails. It's hard to stand in front of those people and play the role of singer-songwriter, you know. But to be anywhere else, great. I can be anybody I want to be. And I like the anonymity of that. But yeah, a bigger crowd where it's not so personal. Yeah, it's easier than to a couple, for sure.
Yeah, makes sense.
I went down to the boulevard to watch them show off their old cars. I found a man with a guitar and I stopped to watch him play. With every song he sang of love, his fingers poked out of his gloves. I didn't breathe so he was done, then I asked him for his name. Told me that his thirst was dry, motioned to the bar inside. He said that if I were to buy it, he would tell me anything. So I helped him gather up his change, then we drank till the last call came. Never even got his name, was glad to meet him just the same. Stumble through the darkened streets, listen steady on my feet, drowning in the summer's heat and sinking like a stone. And I hummed a song that he had played about a girl who went away, and how his heart would always wait, just hoping she'd come home.
Welcome back to the Pagan place. Here, let me chop up that poison for you. No, you keep the tip. All we need is a little like and share. That'll do just fine. There you go. Have a good day.
How was it to play in front of us?
Super cool, actually. Yeah, you've got a real knack for making people comfortable.
Well,
it's a gift.
I try.
It's good
I find it gets easier for me as I go, but
to do this.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of weird, isn't it? You're going to sit down with a stranger and go, let's have a conversation. I mean, the onus is on you, right? You're asking questions. I just get to babble about myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it takes a lot of talent, man. You're good at it.
Well, I don't know if talent's the right word.
For sure it is.
I find just making people comfortable, feel at home. Coffee.
Yep.
Sometimes there's beer in the fridge. Drank it all last night, so there's none right now. But
right. It's good.
Having people play first kind of
opens
them up a little bit, because then they can talk about the songs they played, or they've gotten the, like you said, the more nerve-wracking part out of the way.
Yep.
It seems to work. But everybody's different, and then there's some people that you talk to and maybe they don't want to talk about certain things, or
it's really hard to talk about yourself.
It really is.
And it's something I've learned to do, because it's what you want me to talk about myself. That's the point of being here, but it's not a comfort zone.
No, it's not. And even when people turn questions on me when I'm interviewing them, like, "Oh, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
Or, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Oh shit, I don't know."
And I thought about that. I find the people where it's like, they're just chomping at the bit, or whatever the saying is, to talk about themselves. When they talk, I don't want to hear it, because they sound really arrogant to me. I don't know why, but I think for the most modest, humble person, it is a struggle to talk about. I'm sure Jason struggled yesterday. He's a very modest dude. I'm sure he was probably uncomfortable,
but he did really well too.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
I like getting people telling stories and stuff too.
Yep.
And then that's how you get some of the good stuff.
For sure.
Then they can kind of get outside of themselves a little bit, and then they start rambling. And I love rambly stories. They're my favorite kind of stories to hear myself. So
yeah,
it's the best.
Good. Well, you got a rambler here, so.
Union's got no work for no man, and these arms ain't got the strength they once had. The days are getting long, we still carry on. Union's got no work for no man. People got no time for talking, and children all have grown, don't stop in. And all the plans we made, we don't talk about these days. People got no time for talking. Take me on a Sunday drive, roll the windows down, let's feel alive. The wind blow through what head we've left. Remember when we were young and free, it was me for you, you for me, and all our golden years of time to rust. Left a broken dream for both of us. And it's gone, and it ain't coming back. That look I see in your eyes, an old photograph. And I know that you blame me for things that you couldn't be, but it's gone, and it ain't coming back. And I'm sorry for the things that ain't come true, for all the things you've known in the shit we've been through. I know that you blame me for things that you couldn't be. I'm sorry for the things that ain't come true. Take me on a Sunday drive, roll the windows down, let's feel alive. The wind blow through what
So you're dropping your last track for January to December.
Yep, January 1st.
So that's the time. So is it ready to go, or do you have to make sure you've got it done by January?
No, I have to have it done by then. I've got, I recorded Chris Braden yesterday. He recorded like 8 or 9 different takes of guitar for me. And I've been building, I have this idea for this one where I want it to be like this really subdued, muted rhythm track, which turns out has to be really busy for it to sound like I want it to be actually. And then like a reversed ambient guitar kind of thing with a piano melody sitting on top of that. It'll be a pretty hushed song, I think. But yeah, so I've been building the rhythm track, and over the past few nights. And then Chris came over yesterday. I'm going to go and embarrass myself on the baby grand at the Interactions this evening. And then I'll have to write some lyrics. And that's the struggle. I leave that to the last thing every month because it's a struggle.
Do you find you get disappointed sometimes when you can't match what you're able to create with how it already is in your head?
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten pretty good at arranging the instruments. I've gotten pretty good at recording and getting the right sounds. Where I always run into disappointments, and not always, some I'm really happy with, but is when I get to the vocals.
Yeah.
It's like you say, I hear this thing in my head, and when I'm driving in the car singing it out loud, it sounds just like I want it to, but, I get in front of the mics and go, damn it. In fact, here's a fun one. The February song, it's called Flowers on a Grave. I had been playing that song. I wrote it kind of traditionally, with my guitar downstairs. I had been singing that one real quietly at night. Oh, yeah, this is going to be a good one, And so when I went, I made all the music. And then when I went to record the vocals, I realized I'd been singing it so quiet, sitting in downstairs while everybody's sleeping upstairs, that I can't project this song. It needs to be in a different key. So, I really struggled, and I did not have time to rebuild the track in a different key. So, I really struggled to get the vocals done for that song a lot. I think I worked on that for 4 nights in a row of just singing it, like coming downstairs, like kind of sweaty, but got it done eventually. But yeah, and that's kind of where things go wrong. Like something I think I'd like to do in the future is I think I'd like to do arrangements and production for other people. I love putting the instruments together. I love doing that. And I got a good ear for it. Like I know what should go where and what should drop out, a little busy sometimes, but I love to sing, but it can just be so discouraging that I think it would be a pleasure to be able to just have another singer worry about all that and me just get to put the pieces together, I love the idea of that.
I think that was even me learning just doing open mics and stuff.
Yeah.
The most discouraging part is getting your vocals down and comfortable, just being comfortable with them.
Yep. And open mics are tough because people are going to talk no matter what, man, no matter how good you are.
Exactly.
So yeah, those are, and I take that hard. I don't know what your experiences were, but like, if I get up and sing and people are talking, even at O'Leary's, where of course they're going to talk, I'll think about that for the next 3 days about how bad I must have been. And oh god,
I used to not so much now, but I don't know if I got used to that or I don't know what it is, but
it's being your own self-critic is so deprecating. Yeah.
Luckily though, we have a good group of people. I find if you go to the open mics, like there's somebody reassuring you that it sounded great, or maybe giving you a little bit of advice for next time you got to get your face right into the microphone.
Well, that's an interesting.
Keeps telling me that.
An interesting thing that you say, because I think that might have been like one of the biggest things for me in the local music scene for maybe of the past 20 years was realizing that somebody's listening. As obvious or simple as that might sound, that really became like, and it was Brent Mason that told me it, and that really became like this oh my god kind of thing where you could be at the worst gig or playing the worst show, but somebody's listening, and there's like a responsibility that comes with that, especially if you're making original music, to present the best product that you can. And I like that, like I feel that. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And I like that because that means there is an importance to it, not to sound pretentious, but
it's not a lost moment.
No, and like I remember being 17 years old and sneaking into the Bullenstein to watch Brent Mason because, oh my God, this was somebody local that was making music, and that was incredible. And I can remember when the Port City All-Stars came on the scene, all the high school kids just idolized Adam Mowry, and they should. What an incredible songwriter. But there's some acne-faced teenage kid who really thinks Gordon Lightfoot is wicked cool, and he's scared to tell his friends that, who has seen me play some depressing song at Market Square that thinks I'm cool and I've inspired him in some way. And that is just an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Well, what's saying is as long as you can reach out to one person. Then...
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just important. Think about bands like Little You, Little Me, for example. You know, those guys are like beacons for so many, you know, young high school bands that are coming up that's their template, their blueprint. You know, they want to be them. And we had those and you know, those guys had theirs. And it's cool because when you think in terms of local music and take things like record sales out of the equation, but to be able to go like, you're inspiring somebody is incredible.
Yeah.
You know? And that's
true.
That's where I get off. That's where I think it's really neat.
So you mentioned Brent Mason being a bit of an influence. So
yep.
When you were younger, who were some of the influences that that made you want to play in front of people and stuff like that? Sure.
I didn't have a lot of local ones because I wasn't even aware of the local music scene for, you know, like I say, a long time. You know, there were like the Untouchables and then the Attainables, and that's the categories I put it into. So there were guys like Neil Finn from Crowded House, Paul McCartney, Paul Simon, you know. Those are guys where I'm just like to this day, constantly inspired by them. But it just seems so unattainable to me. Like their minds work on a level I'm not sure I'll ever understand, you know. I've seen YouTube videos of interviews with Paul Simon where he plays like half-finished songs and he talks about where he can go with this from here, and his understanding of music theory boggles my mind. But then there's Attainables, and I got a lot of inspiration from guys like Steve Earle, you know, for a long time. I used Steve Earle to learn how to fingerpick. He has a really aggressive style where he digs into the strings, and me being a drummer, you know, naturally play that way too. So his guitar playing made a lot of sense to me. I used him to learn how to fingerpick. Just his style of songwriting, his approach to melody seemed very attainable to me. So he's a guy that, you know, I drew a lot of inspiration from. A lot of the alt country bands of the early 2000s, Whiskey Town, you know, Ryan Adams' band were huge for me. I adored those guys. The Jayhawks, the old 97s, Blue Rodeo for sure, especially growing up. It's funny too because, you know, young me wanted to be Jim Cuddy. You know, I wanted to have that smooth voice and sing all the ballads. I love ballads. And then, you know, as I got older, I was like, man, this Greg Keeler guy is really the bomb. Like, this guy's really great, you know? So they were kind of one that kept longevity for me. You know, I don't even know if they were so much an inspiration, but bands like 5440 and the Northern Pikes were important for me because I felt like they came from a time when there was really a sense of place in Canadian music. What the Northern Pikes were doing felt very, and I know they're from Saskatoon, but it felt very Toronto. Yeah. To me, you know, I felt like, oh, that's what's happening in this mysterious place called Toronto at this time. And I think it probably was, you know, like Teenland was a weird song, right? Yeah. And I wore the white wife beater and bicycle gloves for a few gigs after that came out, but, you know, just like the drummer, right? And 5440, like they were another weird one for me because this is so mysterious. And I remember them thinking like they were like Canada's Soul Asylum, because Soul Asylum were a band I got into kind of before they were ever, you know, before Runaway Train ever happened or whatever. But I thought, well, these guys have a lot in common with that. There was a band called the Waltons. They were a big one for me because I loved the songwriting and I got to go see them at UMBSJ. I remember being in line for the ATM behind the bass player. And, you know, he chucks the little paper that comes out and says some expletive and walks off. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to take this piece of paper. This is the Waltons. And it was Insufficient Funds. And I remember that being a really big moment for me where I was like, wait a sec, isn't he a rock star? You know? So I don't know. There's some things. A lot of when I was young and starting to write songs, a lot of it was just wanting to be like as good as my friends that were doing the same thing, you know? And that's that healthy competition that I was talking about, where you want it to be the guy to go, hey, check out this one though. Like, should we do this song? You know.
Now that you're a little more developed, other than working with as many musicians as you do, because that's obviously going to alter your stuff. But do you ever come across an album or a band that you'd never really given a chance to before, or maybe it's a new something, and you're like, oh shit, and then you can kind of start to see little tweaks in your
absolutely
stuff?
Yeah. You know, over the past few years I've gotten into jazz music, you know, way more than I ever had. You know, I tried when I was young because I thought I should, but it never spoke to me. But there's a band called The Bad Plus that just blew me away. And on the surface, I could say, like, well, their drummer, Dave King, has been a big inspiration for me drum-wise. But anything I do on the drums is also influencing my songwriting and how I play guitar, too. And it's, what I've realized is that band and their sense of space and their approach to melody has been a big inspiration to me. Like, I've wanted to find more space in my music and kind of capture some of the same moods that they did. A lot of ambient music has, been something I've been digging into over the past, few years. Like Music for Airports by Brian Eno was a massive obsession for me for a long time. The Disintegration tapes, are you familiar with? It's almost hard to explain, but this composer, William Basinski, recorded some music in the 70s, I think, and he wanted to transfer it to digital. And the tapes had been stored in, an old basement and were musty. So they were falling apart as he was doing the transfer. So he decided to record it anyway. And this is what he put out as the Disintegration tapes. The weird coincidence is that, while he's in his basement doing this, 9/11 happens. He's in New York City and 9/11 happens, but he doesn't know. He's down in his basement. He doesn't know what's going on. So, as he's spent the day downstairs listening to his music fall apart, he comes upstairs to his city that has been falling apart. And there's this weird, inexplicable syncopation in it all that's gorgeous. And I love that. It's really almost impossible for other people to listen to unless it's something you enjoy. But, I say give it a shot sometime because it's really this incredible.
I'll definitely look that up.
Thing. Yeah.
Interesting. Has a good story behind it too. That's almost enough reason to.
Well, the story's how I got into it, but yeah.
Almost in the same vein, but what's at the top of your playlist right now?
Right now? Geez, well, let's see. In the car, I have Broken Bells in the CD player right now. At home, on the turntable, I have William Fitzsimmons. It's kind of a new find for me. Do you know his music at all?
I've been told to check it out, but I haven't really touched
he's
into
really
it yet.
good. He's, he's an acoustic-based guy, but ultimately I'd say it's probably pop music. The album I'm listening to is called Lions. It's got a lot of ambient overtones in it and hints of electronica here and there, which, that's something that really interests me. I like the idea of acoustic guitars and drum machines. I like the idea of natural and electronic together.
What advice do you think you could give to anybody who is interested in either, getting into music or writing music or just any advice for think you might be able to impart?
Be part of it. Get present. Go to shows, meet people, play with other people, learn from other people, be humble, and share your music. I did a songwriting clinic one time, and a student had asked me, "How do I get to be a songwriter?" And I said, "Well, write a song." And while that sounds sarcastic, it's really that simple. So you want to be a musician, you want to be part of the community and the scene, well then just do it. It's welcoming and you can,
If you've got to wait, at least you'll know that I'll be waiting. If it's more than you can take, you'll know that I can see you through. I thought I heard you say that everyone believes in something. So if you've lost your faith, at least you'll know that I believe in you. And I think of you in ways me like invitations, they quickly wash away without a single indication. I thought I heard you say that every day is a sunken treasure. So if you've lost your way, at least you'll know I'll search forever and more. got to wait. I hope that you'll think of me, darling. And if it helps to pray, at least you'll know that I'll be praying too. I thought I heard you say we all will reach our destination. So if you've got to wait, at least you'll know that I'll be waiting too. Yeah, I will wait for you.
I have really enjoyed this. Thank you for having me on. I'm going to be tickled pink to be able to listen to the Pagan Place with myself on it. But
Yeah, thank you. I was quite stoked. I was super ecstatic, so I appreciate it.
awesome.
Thank you very
No,
much.
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Hey there, it's Alyssa from Piccadilly Coffee Roasters in Sussex, and you've been listening to the Pagan Place podcast.